going on, golf fans? It's your boy Gsluke here with our round 3 live stream for the Bermuda Championship. Gonna get you ready for all your exposure tomorrow, both on the DFS and the prop side of things, with a look at the weather report, some ownership in the large field GPPs. On the prop side, we'll go over the DP World Tour and PGA averages and some exposure that you can tail for Saturday. But hopefully your week is going great so far. Sorry that I'm in the dark over here. I do have a bit of a migraine brewing, so best to keep the lights and especially the bright ones out of my face here. So that's the reason for that. But having a pretty solid Friday outside of that and ready for the weekend golf ahead of us. Any questions, if you're joining us live, feel free to hit me up in the live chat. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get this thing going. So the first thing we're going to look at would be the averages from round 2, which played easier than I thought it would. The wind was definitely not as big of a factor today as what they were forecasting for. If we split it by the morning versus the afternoon, unlike round 1, where there was a 3-shot differential, today it was almost exactly even from AM to PM. So it's not like it hurt you if you played the PM guys, but it certainly didn't help you either with it playing even across the board. And still kind of wacky what we had out there on Thursday, but round 2 with it playing pretty flat was much more expected, right? That was kind of what we thought would happen on Thursday. I think that was the aberration. And with them going with threesomes off of both tees for tomorrow, there's not going to be a big weather edge to begin with. But when we take a look at the Saturday forecast, it looks like there's going to be quite a bit of precipitation, and in particular towards the afternoon, which is why they're trying to get them out there as soon as possible for tomorrow, and also why they're going with the threesomes. But in the middle of the afternoon, they've got a legit storm coming through that's going to put about a half of inch of rain down. And usually these Caribbean storms, I know from being down here in Florida, they normally have some electricity in the air as well. So I would say that there's a solid chance for a delay, but because everyone's going off in like a 2 to 2.5 hour window, there's not going to be a big edge for DFS. So the big note today was that it played a little bit flatter. And tomorrow, when we split it via the first and second half of tee times, maybe the second half will play quote unquote easier just because you have the more informed players that are going off later. Also the guys that just made the cut. So it does balance out a bit, but typically those guys at the top 5, top 10 far outweigh some of the outliers that you get towards the bottom. Outside of that, though, weather's not going to be big play out here for round number 3. The big play, though, is going to be on the game theory side, of course, which is probably the biggest edge that we have with PGA DFS, and ramps up even more so when we're playing on Showdown, where we only have 18 holes to work with. And when we have weather like we're expecting tomorrow with wind and rain, you really want to embrace that chaos. So just like we mentioned yesterday, we have the ownership projections, the top 10 highest owned players on the slate right here. You want to be avoiding a vast majority of these options. So the highest owned player in my projections, these are from my Patreon page, Vince Whaley at about 30.3%. Number 2 is Pearson Coody. He's been towards the top end of the list all week at $9,900. I've got him at about 28.4%, and Nick Echevarria at 27.5% as well. And Whaley, Echevarria, guys that I played as core plays this week that I'm stoked that we have towards the top end of the board. But now that they are the chalk of all chalk for round 3 Showdown, I'm going to be avoiding those sort of players in particular because I have all of that main slate exposure myself, and I don't have to double dip if I don't want to. I'd rather go down to some of the more differentiated options that we have towards the top. And while people like spending all of their salary, especially after the cut line, when we usually have a few 9 to 10K players that don't make it to the weekend, that further condenses the ownership with some of those spend up options. And that's why you have so much egregious chalk for round number 3. But keep in mind that you've got some guys in like that 15 to 20% range in the 9-10Ks that we're maybe not seeing on this list right here that are awesome leverage spots off of some of the pieces of chalk that you're seeing here. So on my Patreon sheet, when it's not sorted by the ownership, you can see comparatively who some of those players are going to be. And my exposure is centered around a lot of those kind of players. And in the 9-10K range, there are a couple chalky guys that are 20% plus that I am using, but it's very sparingly. There's only 1 or 2, and it's not going to be the guys that are closer to 30%. And when we get down to the 7-8K range, that ramps up even more. I'm trying to be even more differentiated the further down the board that we go, because the quality of player drops off, and there's nobody in the 6-7K range in particular at a field like this that is so weak that's worthy of playing in like 40% of your lineup. So a lot of the top 10 in the ownership is going to be dominated by the top end of the board, and then also players that are playing the best golf. So for example, Takumi Kanaya in the 8K range, he's popping off because he's at -6. once again, a core play for us. So I'm not going to, be too mad about him playing that well, but it just takes away from his utility in the showdown format. So you're going to see me avoiding some of those core plays, getting onto guys that are a little bit lower owned, and in particular in that 9K range. In terms of our player pool, it's also worth noting that there are a few guys that are technically haven't made it through the cut line because they haven't wrapped up round 2. Trevor Cohn and Matteo Manacero have not finished and are in legit chance of missing the weekend. Trevor Cohn has to make a par putt on his last hole to make it, and I have no idea how long or short it is because of the lack of shot link data. And then also Matteo Manacero has 2 penalty shots on a par 5. He's got 2 holes left. I think it's 17 and 18 that he has left. He started on the front side. He had 2 penalty shots on the par 5. So making par there is going to be sketchy. If he bogeys that, then he has to par the last hole. If he double bogeys that par 5, which considering that he's taken 2 penalty drops, that is squarely in play. Just like Cohn, we have no idea where his golf ball actually is because we only see from whatever on the shot tracker. If he double bogeys that hole, then he's going to have to birdie the last hole to make it through to the weekend. But because the rest of the guys that have to finish are either way outside of the cut line and have no chance at making it, or are way inside the cut line, like a Pearson Cootie or Matthew Riedel. Those 2 guys are at -5, and they have to finish their last hole tomorrow morning. Those are the only 2 players that you have to worry about. So on my Patreon sheet, I do have players highlighted because of that, but it's only Code and Maricero that have this yellow tag towards the bottom. But what I more so wanted to point out here are the player pool tags, which are the same as what we had for yesterday. Because we don't have the shot link data, we're not going to be going through the ball striking poppers, short game regression candidates like we typically would. That's our bread and butter here on the channel. So it is unfortunate that we don't have that this time of year, but rather than complaining, right, we got to deal with what we have. And what we have is good course fit metrics that we can lean into. So I'm looking for high upside golfers, guys that make a whole lot of birdies. It's pretty self-explanatory considering that Draftkings scoring is directly correlated to that. Also looking for good course history and Bermuda grass putters. So if you were here yesterday, it's going to be the same player pool tags, except that rather than only going after PM guys like I did yesterday, which again, it didn't necessarily work out for us, I'm going to be playing evenly across the board just because of the tee time setup and the lack of a big weather edge in either direction. But that's essentially it for Showdown, guys. It's mostly a game theory slate, especially when we don't have a big weather edge to lean into. And at a fall series event like this, that should be your primary focus to begin with. So I would say in your large field GPP lineups, you want at least 4 pivots in your lineups, if not even all 5 or 6 players as a pivot. And by a pivot up top, I'm not talking a sub 10%, right? Your pivots up top are the guys that are closer to 15% ownership as opposed to 20, 25, or even 30% ownership. But if you have 4, even 5 pivots in a lineup, large field GPPs, I would say that that's a bit cute sometimes, that you don't have to get that bold with the leverage that you're getting. But on an 18-hole sample size like this, I'm not going to give you any pushback whatsoever. So that's personally what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be really leaning into trying to get different. And yeah, there are some guys that I wanted to play like a Whaley and Echevarria that I love at this golf tournament that I just can't because of that ownership mark. Now let's go to the prop side of things. So we'll go through some underdog and prize pick stuff and what we got for both DP World Tour and PGA. They got Mahalo in the chat. Welcome on in from Maui. That's one of my favorite places on earth. So welcome on in. What's going on? Noah as well. He said, hope the day is going well. It is. I just have a nasty migraine going. So I mentioned that at the beginning, but I think you guys may have missed that because it was in the first like 10 seconds. That's why it's dark here. I've got a nasty migraine. Any bright lights really throw me off. So sorry about that, but I'm having a good day. Other than that, it's only a mild one though. If I had a nasty migraine, I probably wouldn't be on live stream here, but it's a little bit more manageable than that. Let's go through some stat averages. So I've got the PGA ones on here, which we're going to go through first, but we don't have a PGA board to go through. So on prize picks, they haven't quite gone around to it. And I have a feeling it's because of this weather situation. The sports books don't have them up because they don't have the tee times. They usually wait until they get those to go out there and post a board. But because of this kind of nasty weather in the afternoon, prize picks was willing to post a board for round 2. We'll have to see if they post anything for round 3, but it did play significantly easier than the first day of action. In fact, it was about a 2-stroke difference, even over a 2-stroke difference from round 1 to round 2. Birdie average went up to about 4 per round, and the bogey or worse average went down to about 2.61 per round. And these averages that we had from round 2, I was certainly not expecting. I only entered 1 slip. It did not hit for us, which was unfortunate. That was a slip that we went through together here on the live stream yesterday, but the Kanaya prop did hit for us. So we went 1-0 on the PGA side, 0-1, unfortunately, on the DP World Tour side of things. but I did not expect the averages to be as easy as what they were going to be. And with the winds kicking up a bit, they look a little bit more severe than what we had in round 2. That combined with some potential weather towards the very end of play has me thinking that these averages are probably going to get worse. And that might be a bit surprising because a lot of the fall swing here, we've been mentioning that after the cut line, a lot of the times these averages are going to get easier. It's just that the weather situation does not look ideal. And that -1 scoring average that we had for today, I think was as easy as it could possibly have gone with the wind that they were playing in. So that could probably lead to some hesitation from these boards on getting posted, but we'll focus on the DP World Tour side of things. So the DP World Tour has nowhere near as nasty of a weather forecast, was unbelievably consistent with the stat averages from round 1 to round 2 as well, about a 0.04 shot difference from round 1 to round 2, and the birdie average didn't move very much as well. So I think for round 3, we can count on a lot of that holding. The only difference being is because it's a moving day setup, there actually might be some easier pin locations than what we've had the first few days. And I haven't been watching the entire golf tournament nearly as much as what I've been trying to follow on the PGA side of things. But from what I noticed, they had a lot of tucked pin locations. And, our guy Ryan, who unfortunately went over by 1 stroke today, he fell victim to that on one of the par 3s. He made a double bogey after putting it in the water. So if they soften up these pin locations, perhaps there's less doubles, there's less bogeys being made because of that. That could lead to maybe a -2.5 scoring average, which if so, would make the board on Prize Picks unbelievable value. But I'm personally projecting for about the -2 scoring average that we had for the first couple days, just to be pretty conservative about it. But even at that -2 scoring average number, there's still quite a bit of value to be had on Prize Picks. So let's go through 2 of those props that I entered. So it's a John Perry under at 70.5 strokes, and then it's an under on Shane Lowry at 69.5 strokes. So Perry, it's a par 72 setup. He's got to shoot -2 to cover that, and then Shane Lowry's got to shoot -3 to cover that sort of number. So Perry shooting the field average, I think, is very reasonable, at least to ask from him. He's somebody that over the last 6 months on the DP World Tour has averaged about 0.34 shots gained per round. So he's not an elite tier player per se that's gaining 1.5 to 2 strokes per round, but he is in the top 10 of the DP World Tour rankings because of how consistent he's been this season. And asking him to have a field average day is, I think, something that he's going to do 55 to 60% of the time. In fact, if you compare it to his sportsbook odds on sites like Draftkings, he's at 70.5 and he's -155 towards the under. So that is well over that plus EV mark that we need for a 2-leg slip. 2-leg slips have some of the more in-house juice on these pick'em sites, but if you get over that -140 mark, then you're going to be into that plus EV range. So that's the John Perry lean, almost -160 juice into somebody that's been eerily consistent in 2025. And then we have Shane Lowry on the other side of this that has been gaining about 1.04 shots gained per round over the last 6 months. And Shane Lowry's doing that on the PGA Tour. It's not like he's doing that on the DP World Tour, where gaining strokes is a bit easier than what we have on the best tour and all over the world in the PGA side. So his 1 shots gained per round is even more impressive than, let's say, the 0.34 shots gained that we have for John Perry. So for him to shoot -3, that's gaining a stroke to the round 1 and 2 averages. I think that's a very reasonable ask for Shane Lowry, just like John Perry having an average day, right, with that 0.34 shots gained baseline is a very reasonable thing to ask, because Lowry's 1 shot gained is coming from the hardest place to gain strokes in the entire world. And if you take a look at his sportsbook odds, he's -145 towards the under at that same exact number. So you got a -155, a -145, any sort of parlay you're entering on the sportsbook. So you're not going to get the same kind of payout that you're getting here. In fact, you're getting a 2.65, 2.7x payout at the very best. So although there's some correlation between these and we aren't getting the full 3x payout because of that, these were worthy of mixing in my opinion. So that'll be the tail that we have for round number 3. That's on the DP World Tour side. As again, we don't have the PGA board quite yet. And just speaking frankly, I don't think the PGA side is the better tournament to bet this week. It's got so much crazy weather shit going on. I mean, a 2-stroke differential from day to day, but seemingly the same weather forecast is a bit head scratching, right? I mean, it was for me. I wasn't expecting it to play -1. DP World Tour side, super consistent in rounds 1 and 2, might even play easier because of the moving day setup. But then we also have to think about the strength of field. They've got Rory, they've got Shane Lowry, they've got Ludwig Gobert, Matt Fitzpatrick. They've got all these legit players, Justin Rose. That's even just starting. There are a lot more that are playing in that field. Terrell Hatton, a lot of Tom McKibben. There's a bunch of live guys that are also in that field that are really good. Why not bet on the players that if any of them were playing in this field, the Bermuda Championship that is, they would be the instant favorite, odds on favorite by far if they were in this field? why not bet on those guys in that golf tournament? I mean, that's just kind of the epiphany that I had this afternoon. It's not even like we missed the PGA prop that I played for round 2. I just think it's silly to focus that much on that side. And you've got all this craziness that's going on. So they don't even have a board up. So we're not going to be able to go through that here together. But the DP World Tour is where I'm going to be focusing on for round number 3 and where our tail is going to be for the community. But for the rest of the props I'm entering, you guys can find that on my Patreon page, all the underdog and prize pick stuff I'm entering, also any matchup bets that I'm entering on Hard Rock Bet as well. And for all the DFS stuff that we were going through before, every single player projected with ownership, also my entire player pool with the player pool tags, you guys can find that under the golf DFS tier. But all of those, or both of those tiers, are $15 a piece. So it's not like it costs you an arm and a leg to take advantage of all the projections that I produce. Unlike a lot of the other websites that cost you $50 to $100+ a month, it's much more reasonable. You get even more in-depth research than what you're finding elsewhere. So I think it's a pretty no-brainer to check it out. So link in the description if you guys haven't already joined the Patreon page. But if we get a PGA board and there's value to be had, I mean, I might not want to play on PGA, but if they post props that are off by 2 strokes, I'm going to. Right? Like, let me be honest about it. Like, if they post guys at like 72.5 strokes over par, like, yeah, I'm going to probably play them to shoot even par or +1 or worse in that kind of scenario. But we'll have to see what we get over there. But that's where you guys can find all that. Let me see if there's any questions that we need to go through, and then we'll get this thing going. What's going on? Noah says, what do we think about Rosie at 69.5? Yeah, so I liked Lowry myself, as he has a bit of a better form over the last 6 months. But yeah, Rose would be somebody I'd be okay taking to gain a stroke to the field. I think there might be a few other guys at 6 to 9.5 that I slightly prefer. But yeah, PGA Tour guys that over the last 6 months have been gaining strokes to the field, -3 is well within their range of outcomes. What's going on, Antonio? Welcome on in. He said, thoughts on Nico tomorrow? He shot -2 and didn't birdie a par 5. Yeah, he's going to have a round this week where he makes 6 to 7 birdies. He goes on that really hot putter run that we saw Sunday of the last time out. If it happens, I'm going to be super glad about it, but he's just super high owned for me in DFS. So I know your question wasn't necessarily about DFS. I think in general, I'd have to rate him like a 7.5 out of 10. It's just that he's at a 9.5 out of 10 with the ownership. So I'd say in betting formats, all things are good for Nico. I'd pretty much be buying there wherever I can. DFS, where I'm playing against the rest of the field, that does slightly change. Thoughts on Roy for the under at 67.5? It's plus money for the under. So yeah, that's shooting -5. The thing is, when you have legit tour players that are 2 strokes higher than him, like a Lowry, I know somebody mentioned Rosie at 69.5 strokes as well, it makes it tough to want to play somebody to shoot -5, but this golf course has been unbelievably favorable for Rory over the years. In fact, I know he's won it multiple times. I think when he hasn't won, he's finished top 10. If it's not every single year, I think it's every year but once at this golf tournament. It is a 50-player field. It's limited because it's a playoff event. It's their tour championship on the DP World Tour. But finishing in the top 20% every time you play at that event is elite level stuff. So I'm not going to give you too much pushback, Antonio. I think the +110 is the saving grace. I mean, if that was like -120, -130, and you were eating some juice, I might tell you to stay clear of that one. But at +110 at a golf course that suits his game, I like it. I think I could get behind that. He said, in Luke we trust. Let's get this cheese, man. Amen to that. He said, you're not going to lie. You watch every round for the PGA Tour, but you couldn't care less about this tournament. No ShotLink featured groups, and it's boring. I agree with you on that, man. And I haven't quite gone to the point where I don't care about it at all, because I clearly do. I have to do it for my work and whatnot. But like, there isn't an event for golf. I guess last week was pretty close to it. It hasn't been a stretch of golf that's probably meant less than what we had over the last couple of weeks. And it has to do with the live movement, has to do with the fact that there's no incentive for the guys in the top 50 to even play. And we are getting some top 50 guys next week. So it's going to be a slightly better field next time out. We're also going to have ShotLink metrics because it's the RSM Classic. But the only reason like Harris English is playing, I think Ben Griffin might be playing, there might be another guy that's the Sea Island Mafia that's showing up, is because their house is like 1.5 miles away from the golf course. So they've got to change something. They've got to add some incentive for these guys to play during the fall swing, or else it's going to be boring like it has been for the last couple of weeks. So I agree with that sentiment. Maybe they'll change it going forward. They'll, bring in the ShotLink data. They'll maybe raise the purse by a couple $1 million, whatever the case may be, just to try and make it better for us fans. But that's all I've got, guys. I appreciate your support on the channel as per usual. Smash that like button if you guys haven't already. Also subscribe to the channel so you guys don't miss any of the content to come. Tomorrow night, we're going to be doing a similar live stream going over round 4 for the Bermuda Championship. and round 4 for the DP World Tour Championship. So stay tuned for all of that. Subscribe so you guys get notified when I'm going live for that. Patreon page is where you guys can find all the content that I'm posting on top of these live streams. And let's have ourselves a moving day.